The Egyptian-Armeni relations have derived their strength from the deep-rooted history documented by evidence before approximately 3500 BC, and they are witnessing a constant development. Through the talks between President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, both countries strive to strengthen these exemplary relations and push them to wider horizons. At the political level between the two countries, the Sultanate of Oman has consistently recorded positive positions on a number of issues backing Egypt, including the Renaissance Dam negotiations, in which Oman reaffirmed the need to reach an agreement that meets the interests of all party states. The consensus in political visions between the two countries on many regional and international issues is another example of harmony, consultation, understanding, coordination, and joint cooperation. The first visit of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to the Sultanate of Oman in February 2018 contributed in strengthening the advanced relations between the two countries and the fruitful cooperation between them. The efforts made by the Egyptian-Armeni Joint Committee during the last period led to signing a number of memoranda of understanding and bilateral cooperation programs in all economic, commercial, and investment fields that would open up new qualitative prospects for cooperation between the two countries. The Egyptian and Armenian sides are making persistent efforts to promote economic and investment relations in a manner that serves common interests and augments the volume of trade exchange between them through the role of the Armenian Chambers of Commerce and the Egyptian-Armeni Business Council. These efforts exerted by the two countries explore opportunities for cooperation available in the areas that enjoy a comparative advantage, such as tourism, construction, mining, and other lucrative sectors. Statistics indicate that the volume of trade exchange between Egypt and Oman had witnessed a remarkable increase, as it registered at the end of 2021 about $535.4 million, compared to earlier figures which amounted to $254.3 million. The number of Egyptian companies investing in the Sultanate of Oman in 2020 stand at 744, with the total invested capital hitting more than $1.856 billion. Oil and gas products, iron ores, polypropylene and polyethylene products, fisheries represented the commodities exported from the Sultanate of Oman to Egypt, while the imported commodities from Egypt are vegetables, fruits, foodstuffs, and medical products. The average number of current flights between the two countries is about 20 weekly flights between Muscat and Cairo, in addition to 2 weekly flights between Muscat and Alexandria. In the logistics sector, Armenian ports are connected by direct shipping lines with the Egyptian ports at a rate of 4 weekly trips between Salalah Port and Borsaid and Damietta Port. These connection lines contribute to promoting direct export and import of goods and merchandise between both countries. They also provide the best options for traders and importers from the country of origin and benefiting from direct international shipping lines to both countries.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Abu Zeid. Now, Doctor, when we look at the volume of trade and the volume of investment between both countries now, many investments in Egypt amount to $77.5 million, whereas Egyptian investments in Oman amount to $680 million. Now, this is quite significantly much more than what Omani investments are in Egypt. How do we balance it out? How can we encourage more investments, more Omani investments in Egypt? You've spoken about different prospects and different diverse opportunities of investments between both countries. What sort of opportunities are we talking about?
Actually, that's a very valid question. And the reason is, I would answer it in one word: opportunity. We have the opportunity now, or opportunities now in Egypt, to attract more of the Omani investment. And I'm sure that the president and his team and the delegation with the president would not waste the opportunity to talk and strengthen and capitalize on the visit to attract more of these investment in Egypt. The very striking and obvious example, which is directly impacting Oman, is the Suez Canal region and the Suez Canal investment in that whole investment area. That directly, Omani ships or ships going to Oman will definitely pass through the Suez Canal and will need support, can do the loading and unloading, all this kind of logistical support as well as economic and commercial support. Oman as a country, just I want to point out something, 300 plus thousand square kilometer, almost 1/3 of Egypt. This vast area is only populated by 5 million people, and 5 million people, almost 2.9 or 3 million of whom are Omani, and the rest are people who are working there from various nations, many of them, by the way, from Pakistan, from the Near East, which is India, Pakistan, and these countries. What I also would like to highlight here is the cooperation in tourism. In the break, I was mentioning that Oman is a very attractive country for tourism, and creating this kind of exchange in expertise, investment, both countries in tourism. Tourism these days, and the tourists do not fly to one country. I think everybody knows now that large companies and enterprises for tourism, they make for you like a portfolio, especially if you can do it by ship, from the Red Sea all the way to Oman and vice versa. So I'm talking about opportunities in investment and investment in the tourism sector. More striking and more eminent than that is the Suez Canal region. And I mentioned on another occasion, and today as well, on the educational part. Cooperation. I mean, Egypt has always capitalized on its human resources, and was nicely highlighted in your nice report as well about the cooperation in the construction of modern Oman. Oman was an independent nation in the year 1970. That's not very old time, but definitely in this 52 years, they managed to increase and enhance the standard of living in a way that's really remarkable. By the way, Oman is almost in the middle of the nations of the world in terms of economic growth, and they weren't like that 20 years ago. So they are advancing in a steady way, but definitely that vast area, these resources, your report alluded to their metal and minery and petroleum and gas, would very much benefit from the Egyptian expertise in this regard.
Well, Egypt is becoming really an energy hub. It's really working hard to get into that league, and it seems that Egypt is rubbing shoulders now with the heavyweights of the petroleum industry and the energy industry all over the Arab world, especially at a time where energy is becoming quite scarce, especially in Europe. Now everyone wants to put a cap on the oil and gas coming from Russia. Is this a good opportunity for Egypt to present its potential and portfolio in the gas industry to really become a major player, really making use of the expertise of all these countries?
As a matter of fact, when you started directing this question to me, I was about to talk about that, and thank you for bringing up this very important point. Let's hope that the war between Russia and Ukraine stops now, not even tomorrow. I think if the war stops now, the world, and particularly Europe, will no longer rely on Russia as the major provider of gas and some petroleum. Maybe the relation will not go back to normal for the foreseen future. We don't wish anything bad for any nation in the world, but I'm just saying that that's where the opportunity lies to Egypt in terms of gas and oil and so on. I have to say, and I really recall that vividly, 5 years ago, well before these recent conflicts have erupted, our president, our political leadership has planned and mentioned repeatedly that Egypt should be the world hub or a key world hub for gas, particularly for gas trading in the area and in the region, regardless of the amount of gas we produce, which is alhamdulillah increasing, and hopefully other discoveries are underway. So the answer is yes, not only rubbing shoulders, but cooperating. And to do that, you don't have to have all the oil and gas in the world. You need to have the means, as you said, the expertise, the know-how, and the geographic location. You are in the Mediterranean, you are in the Red Sea, you have the Suez Canal. What more do you need? And you have the expertise. So that's an opportune moment for Egypt to utilize, and I'm confident that we would not waste this opportunity.
Dr. Abu Zeid, now the next visit will be taking President Sisi to Bahrain. Now, what should we be expecting from such a visit? What are we wanting the same thing from Bahrain as we want from Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar? What are the prospects of Bahrain? What sort of political player will, what sort of influence could they have?
Okay, a lovely point. I would say of course, the visit has its nature. The relationship between Egypt and other nations would differ in the volume of trade, political relationship, and so on. The gaps in trade and economic partnership will arise here and there, but definitely there is a common thread, if not a tie, among all these, something that ties all these visits together. It's the political common stand of the Arab nations, as well as the need for intensifying the economic cooperation, because I think all the nations in the world, particularly in our region now, are very much alerted by what's going on. And definitely, while we remain optimistic, we have to prepare ourselves for the worst. If this war or that conflict or this situation will continue for a longer time, we definitely would have to rely on each other much more than relying on other, let's say, external parties. So I would say this will be definitely emphasized, sealed. I wouldn't expect from the King of Bahrain any different, let's say, stand on that. I will just only say one distinct difference is that our relationship with Bahrain, I think Bahrain have perhaps more investment in Egypt than we have in Bahrain, but definitely when you talk to any Arab leader nowadays, that's the time to try to think less of investing in the West, in Europe, with all what's happening, and to try to invest in countries that you definitely have more historic and more present and past ties, like Egypt, like the Gulf countries, and I would hope that that will unfold itself in a very good way very soon.
Well, you've mentioned the economic cooperation, the prospect of economic cooperation between Egypt and all these countries, and you've mentioned the string binding all these visits, having a similar stance on political issues. We talked about the situation with Iran. Now, what other files, what other issues do all these Arab states need to be standing on an equal footing, similar unified stance politically that we will need as an Arab community to have a similar opinion on?
I will go back to the important point that was raised in our discussion minutes ago. I think the Irani file. The Irani file could be used to erupt the whole region and put the whole region in a state of instability. And it's not to the welfare of any country in the region to have this, let's say, issue erupting anyway. I would say I'm saying that with the hope that no country in the region will slide into some kind of unnecessary conflict there. Also, and let's be also very, very frank about that, the normalization with Israel, that's another point. We would like this process to take place in a rational way, in a way that guard the interests of the Arab nations, but at the same time, all the Arab nations at the same time, not to overlook or forget or underestimate the rights of our brothers and sisters in Palestine, the right of existence, the right that the Israelis themselves said that there's going to be a two-state solution with previous administrations. So that's another important file that we want to achieve the balance in the middle of these talks.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. Abu Zeid mentioned, a lot of prospects lie ahead and lie in the cooperation between Egypt and Oman, and not just that, but all the string of visits between Egypt and the leaders of the Gulf region. Now, we'll still be following up the developments taking place in the visit, the President's visit to Bahrain later on, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. Before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Dr. Mohamed Naguib Abu Zeid, the professor at the American University in Cairo. Dr. Abu Zeid, it's a pleasure having you with us on the show.
Pleasure to be here always.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Night International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.